Okay, this is the new Fujifilm X100 camera, the X100VI. So that's X100VI if you're looking at the letters. And this is exciting. When Fujifilm said they were going to send this out for me to review, I was genuinely really excited because the X100 cameras are lovely. They're just a little bit different to a lot of the other cameras that I get to use kind of for review. They just feel so nice. It's such an enjoyable experience to go out and use a camera like this with the fixed lens. I loved the X100V or X100V, and this is absolutely no different. I love the feel of it, the look of it. I feel like a proper photographer when I'm out with this camera. The slightly more analog feel of the camera, the way it kind of is set up, the size of it, the weight of it, it's just very, very nice to go out and shoot with. And certainly the new X100VI, you're going to feel right at home using this if you're familiar with any of the X100 cameras from the past. The X100V, this certainly looks very similar, basically the same actually. It feels basically the same in the hands as well. And externally, it is very much what you know and love already. And if you're just jumping on the X100 kind of series now, this is a fantastic place to start. And that's because there are some big upgrades inside the camera. We're looking at an updated sensor, an updated processor, which gives this quite a lot more kind of oomph when it comes to the actual image quality. We're looking at a big bump in resolution, so 40 megapixels now on the X100VI versus 26 megapixels on the X100V. We're looking at big upgrades to things like the autofocus as well, so similar autofocus systems to those that we've seen on things like the XT5 and the XH2 with better subject detection, much improved algorithms, and I think this is super impressive, we're looking at a new IBIS system in the camera, so up to 6 stops of image stabilization. But without making the camera noticeably heavier, it is, I think, a fraction heavier. We'll get into it in the specs in a minute, but you really can't tell the difference. And then the size, remarkably, is the same in terms of height and width. It's just 2 millimeters deeper, which I really don't think anyone's going to notice. That's really impressive. So there's a lot that's actually new and updated with this camera. So let's talk a little bit about it. Now, normally I would start off with image quality when it comes to reviewing a camera like this, but I do think actually with the X100 series, it's important to talk about the camera itself and the feel of it, the design of it. This is where there's not so much of a change over previous models, and that's absolutely fine because that's part of the appeal of the X100 cameras is the look and the design and the feel of using this. It's a much more analog experience. It's much more like a film camera, right? So a lot of people will describe this as kind of like a digital film camera, which does make a lot of sense, even though it sounds like it's a little bit contradictory. It does make a lot of sense. It's like using a film camera, but with all of the kind of upsides of using a digital camera. That means you've got all the nice kind of analog dials on the top, which are all still here. We've got the nice kind of ergonomic controls. The size of it is really nice. The viewfinder is the same. The lens is the same. So this is a 23 millimeter fixed lens f2, which is great. That gives you an equivalent focal length of 35 millimeters. f2 is nice and fast. That's giving you quite a lot of light coming in. It gives you the ability to get a little bit of a blurred background if you want to. On the back, we see the same flip out screen, although it does actually flip down a little bit further than the X100V. Whether you'll notice that in reality while using the camera, but you know, it's nice. It's still a flip out screen, goes all the way flat like that, which is actually how I was using it quite a bit with street photography. I've taken this out and about. I've had terrible weather, to be honest with you, but that's not the end of the world because it's been really, really moody weather. Great for some interesting street photography. So I've been out and about with this in the rain, trying to take kind of street photos. It's perfect for that kind of thing. That's exactly how I used the X100V, and that's exactly how I like using these cameras. They're just great for street photography stuff. But of course, with a higher resolution like this, you could absolutely be shooting landscape, portrait, all kinds of stuff on this camera. Otherwise, on the camera itself, you've just got the different connections on the side there, including USB-C, which is always nice to see. And then just one UHS-1 SD card slot just down here as well, which is absolutely what you'd expect on a camera like this, and just the same as on the X100V. But what's not the same is some of the internal stuff, like I touched on in the intro. So starting off with the new updated sensor, we've got a 40 megapixel sensor in here now. So a really big bump up in resolution. And it is noticeable, both in terms of actually having more detail in your shots, but also the ability to then crop if you want to later, which I find particularly helpful when it comes to street photography. It allows me to capture a moment, and then if I want to slightly reframe things, I can. It actually really helps me out in particular with a camera like this, because when it comes to street photography, Something I really struggle with is getting up close to people. Having the increase in resolution means that I can actually shoot from a little bit further away and crop in a little bit later on as well, if that's how I want to do it. But it gives you a lot of kind of scope for how you want to use this camera. If you want to shoot more landscape stuff, if you want to shoot more portrait stuff, it's a bit more all-roundery because you've just got so much detail to play with. Combine that with the new updated processor as well. So this is the X Processor 5, and it's nice and snappy. We see slightly better noise handling as well, and it's now ISO 125 standard sensitivity. And I've got to say, images from this just look fantastic. It's such a fun camera to shoot with, but the images are really, really nice as well. And something I love about these cameras is there's a lot of emphasis on getting everything right in camera rather than maybe editing later. Of course, you can edit later, but for me, this always feels like the kind of camera where I want to take the photo in camera and be happy with that, not thinking about how I'm going to spend half an hour editing the photo later. And to that point, you've got all the film simulations to play around with as well. Now there's 20 film simulations in the X100VI, including Reala Ace as well, which is one of the newer ones. And it is just a lovely way to shoot. It just gives you a very different look to your photos. I've got to say, I know it's not the newest one. I love Across. I just think it looks really nice. That's the black and white one. I found myself using it arguably too much. I had to stop myself using it all the time because it's just such a nice way to shoot. And I love it with this camera. But you've got all of those in there, as well as the grain effect and the color chrome effect as well. Autofocus is also upgraded in the camera, so it's much more in line with cameras like the X-H2 and the X-T5 now. So you've got the updated algorithm, which is much better at detecting subjects and actually detecting what you want to focus on. It's very fast, very snappy. The new subject detection as well is in there. So you've got things like cars, planes, trains, bikes, animals, birds, as well as, of course, humans, face, eye detection, that sort of thing. It does make it very easy to make sure you're focusing on the right part of the image. And certainly when I was out doing street photography, it was just drawing a nice rectangle around a person who'd be walking, focus on them as they move, it would track them. You've got touch tracking on the back as well if you want to use it that way. It's just very easy. It's very snappy, very good. Autofocus now kind of across the industry is so good, it's ridiculous. And that's certainly the case here as well. And then we've got IBIS in the camera, so up to 6 stops, which is pretty remarkable when you consider the X-T5 has up to 7 stops. So only 1 stop more than the X100VI, which is really impressive when you consider the size and the weight of this. So like I said earlier, just a touch heavier than the X100V. It's 43 grams heavier. I don't think anyone's going to notice that. And then same width, same height, 2 millimeters deeper. I don't think anyone's going to notice that either. So that's really impressive. They managed to fit that inside this camera without dramatically having to alter the size and the weight of it. It does shoot video as well, as pretty much every camera now is a hybrid camera on some level. I would absolutely say these are photography first cameras, and for me, I probably wouldn't even think much about shooting video, but it's nice that it's in there, up to 6.2K, up to 30 frames a second, 422 10-bit internal as well. So it's actually quite impressive. But like I say, this is, I think, primarily, and I think for almost everyone, going to be a photography first camera, if not just a photography camera. And what a lovely way to shoot. If you're new to the X100 series, this is like getting a film camera in terms of kind of the analog controls, the way the camera feels when you go out and shoot with it. It's a lovely experience to be using this camera, but with all of the kind of upsides that come with a new digital camera like this. Great image quality, a lot that you can do with it, great resolution. I mean, there's some really decent upgrades to this. When I first saw it, I thought, okay, it looks like an X100 camera, which of course is exactly what you want from an X100 camera. But under the hood is where there's actually quite a bit going on. And actually, it feels like a decent upgrade. If you have the X100V, I actually can see a lot of reasons to want to upgrade to this camera. And like I say, if you're new to this, this is a really, really fun camera. This is the kind of camera that I would have for my weekends, right? For going out and about, not wanting to take a big camera, big lens. Yeah, mirrorless cameras they're not big. But you get what I mean. This is literally able to fit in your pocket, which is exactly how I took it around when I went out in the rain. Now you can check out the full spec of this camera, all of the fun stuff, all of the interesting information, the deep dive stuff you want to know about by following the link down in the description. I've got it here in black, but it does come in silver as well, which I think is really, really nice to look at. I love the silver one. I think it just, oh, yes, it looks so good. No offense to the black version. I think that looks lovely as well. But silver, ooh, yes, indeed. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all of the time. I will see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.